Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating journey into the deep metaphysical logic of absolute giving, specifically according to classical Buddhist philosophy. We'll be exploring the profound insights found in the Mahapryanjaparamita Upadesha, which is this foundational text by the philosopher Nagarjuna. We're going to completely deconstruct what it actually means to be generous, stripping away our modern, comfortable ideas of charity and looking at the radical, paradigm-shifting concept of dana paramita.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1, the river of giving. 2, Buddhas versus Arhats. 3, the emptiness of the three. 4, the fulfilled state. And finally, 5, the source of all virtues. Starting right off with Section 1, the river of giving. To really understand absolute generosity, we first need to look at the fundamental allegory classical Buddhism uses for the spiritual journey, which is crossing a very treacherous river. So the specific term we're unpacking is dana paramita. Dana means giving or charity, and paramita literally translates to reaching the other shore or perfection. The text sets up this incredibly vivid metaphor. I want you to imagine you're standing on a shore defined by greed, attachment, and this deeply ingrained illusion of ownership. Now, across a massive, turbulent river is the other shore, the pure, liberated state of Buddhahood or nirvana. In this framework, the act of giving isn't just, a nice thing to do. It is the literal raft you have to build and paddle to get across that river. But here's the catch. Building this raft and actually making it all the way across is ridiculously difficult. The text shares this dramatic parable about Shariputra, one of the Buddha's chief disciples, to show us just how hard it is. Shariputra decides he's going to practice absolute giving. So a beggar approaches him and asks for something absolutely unthinkable, his eye. Shariputra, entirely committed to his path, extracts his eye and gives it to the beggar. But the beggar doesn't thank him. No. Instead, he smells the eye, recoils in disgust, spits on it, drops it, and literally crushes it with his foot. Watching this, Shariputra is just overwhelmed by disgust and frustration. And honestly, who wouldn't be? You give up a physical piece of yourself, and it's treated like garbage. He thinks to himself, these people cannot be saved. And he turns his raft around. He abandons the bodhisattva path of serving everyone, opting instead for a lesser path of personal liberation. He failed to reach the other shore. And this brings us to a really critical distinction made in the text. There are essentially 2 types of giving. The first is what the text calls demon dana. Now, this doesn't mean giving to literal demons. It means giving that gets hijacked by our own internal afflictions, things like pride, the expectation of gratitude, regret, or worry. Demon dana is kind of like donating to a charity but getting furious when they don't send you a personalized thank you letter, or giving a gift just for the Instagram aesthetic, right? Shariputra's giving became demon dana the exact moment he felt resentful. On the flip side, Buddha dana is entirely pure. It's fearless. It is completely free from any internal robbers of affliction. With Buddha dana, it doesn't matter what the receiver does with the gift. The act itself is pure and propels the giver straight toward that ultimate path.
Moving on to Section 2, Buddhas versus Arhats. Now, you might be wondering, if Shariputra was highly enlightened, if he was an Arhat, why on earth did he fail this test? What's the actual difference between an Arhat's realization and a bodhisattva's perfection of giving?
Well, the source material explains that while an Arhat successfully crosses the river of suffering to attain personal peace, their giving is still fundamentally limited. A bodhisattva's giving is a whole different ballgame. They give all things without exception, both inside and outside themselves. They give at all times, possessing this boundless, universal compassion. But the true separator here is metaphysical. A bodhisattva deeply knows that the act of giving is uncreated and unextinguished. They give without ever seeking a karmic reward or even an emotional payoff.
Section 3, Emptiness of the Three. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is that it forms the philosophical climax of our whole explainer. How does a bodhisattva actually achieve this state without just going completely mad with loss? To explain this, Nagarjuna essentially uses the concept of emptiness to completely hack the psychology of giving. To perfect giving, you have to realize the emptiness of the three. First, there's the gift itself. The text uses the example of a piece of cloth. A cloth is really just a temporary combination of threads, which are combinations of fleece, which are combinations of elements. It has no permanent self-nature. Second, the giver. The person doing the giving is ultimately just an illusion, a temporary grouping of biological aggregates and consciousness. And finally, the receiver. Metaphysically speaking, there is no permanent, unchanging self receiving the gift. All three components are just fluid, empty conditions. So, the absolutely crucial point here is this. Realizing emptiness isn't about nihilism. It's actually the ultimate liberation mechanism. If you deeply understand that there is no fixed self to be depleted, well, you lose your hesitation. If there is no fixed gift that is truly yours to begin with, you feel no sense of loss. Emptiness completely removes the ego from the equation, and this is exactly what frees the bodhisattva to give limitlessly. Section 4. The fulfilled state. Okay, so what does this massive philosophical breakthrough actually look like in practice? The Mahaprajnaparamita Upadesha anchors this really high-level philosophy with some incredibly intense, visceral parables. For example, King Sarvadatta, after losing his kingdom, actually binds himself and gives himself to a poor Brahmin just so the Brahmin can collect the bounty. Then there's the Moon Prince, who cuts open his own bones to give his marrow to cure a sick man. And perhaps the most striking one of all, the Buddha, in a past life as a six-tusked elephant. A hunter shoots him with a poisoned arrow specifically to get his tusks. But instead of crushing the hunter, the elephant protects him from the rest of the herd, asks him what he wants, and then uses his own trunk to pull out his tusks and hands them over. It's wild, right? But because they realize the absolute emptiness of the body, treating it like mere grass or wood, they can act with this absolute unwavering generosity. And that brings us to Section 5, Source of All Virtues. This radical form of giving isn't just some isolated niche practice. It is literally the foundation of the entire spiritual path. And this brilliantly illustrates how dana is actually the root source of the other 5 perfections. Think about it. By giving and removing poverty, people aren't forced into theft or harm, which naturally cultivates morality. When a giver faces ungrateful receivers, kind of like Shariputra did, but actively chooses to endure it, that giving births patience. Overcoming the immense physical and mental obstacles to help others creates diligence. The pure joy and lack of regret from giving naturally calms the mind, removing hindrances and leading right into meditation. And finally, contemplating the impermanence of the gift, the giver, and the receiver births ultimate wisdom. Giving is the engine for literally all spiritual growth. To show you just how deeply interconnected these virtues are, the text offers this really striking quote regarding patience during giving. It says, "If I do not tolerate this, the gift becomes impure, like a white elephant washing in a pool, then throwing dirt on itself." So if you do the hard work of giving away your wealth or your time, but then get angry because the person wasn't grateful enough, you've just thrown dirt on your perfectly clean action. Patience is absolutely required to protect the perfection of giving. We've crossed some incredibly deep philosophical waters today, moving from the mundane shores of greed, past the illusion of the ego, all the way to the radical emptiness of a bodhisattva's absolute generosity. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder as you go about your day. If the giver, the receiver, and the gift are all ultimately an illusion, what is the true nature of your next act of kindness? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.